Good morning, NIRSA. I'm Pam Watts. I'm NIRSA's Executive Director. I'm going to be joined shortly by our current NIRSA President, David Davenport. We're doing our first Instagram Live this morning to share a few updates about what's going on in the association, what we're hearing from members, what's going on campuses out there. So a happy Friday to you all. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, I see David joining in. So let's get him connected and then we'll get started here in a sec. This is only my second Instagram Live and my first time hosting. I think this is David's first Instagram Live, so you may need to bear with us a little bit as we get this format figured out. So we'll get David clicked in here in a sec and then we'll be on our way. It's nice to see some friends out there in the Instagram Live this morning. We didn't heavily market this time. This is a little bit of a pilot test, a beta test. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Happy Friday.
Good. So I guess I managed to turn it on, right? So
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, I was just kind of announcing to our audience that this is a first for us, and so hopefully they'll do the NIRSA graceful thing and extend us some patience as we get this figured out. But it should be pretty easy. They tell me it's easy. All the kids are doing it.
All righty.
Well, again, just a kind of overview, David and I want to share what we're hearing from members, what's going on in the association these days, you know, between COVID and the spotlight on racism and how campuses are pivoting rapidly in this new normal, and NIRSA's pivoting as well to continue to meet the needs of campus recreation professionals. We thought this might be a fun, engaging, real-time format to answer some of your questions that we've been getting through the weeks and share some of the things going on in NIRSA. So the last time I think David and I spoke to NIRSA members formally was a letter we both wrote in mid-June talking about the systemic racism in America, the recent spotlight on racism, and kind of where each of us were at both personally and professionally. So we want to start there and give a bit of an update. So David, what are you hearing from members or on your campus about racism, issues of racism in our communities?
So yeah, so it's been a trying time for us in our country, but for our members, I feel a little bit more touched by it because we're comfortable enough to reach out and talk about it. But what the common overarching thing is, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of people asking how and why, and the need that folks want to help or want to end or want to find improvement is a good feeling. So one of the biggest things that has impressed me, not the biggest, but one of is the fact that our let's call it our allies have been wanting to help and support and looking for ways how to do that, not just from a race standpoint, but from our colleagues on our campuses and our folks in our community and different individuals. So that's super encouraging. I think the hard part for us when you throw COVID in the mix, it just makes it even more difficult. But from a civil unrest standpoint, it's the desire to make things better is right there, low hanging fruit, and more and more people are grabbing that fruit, and that's urgent to me.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed, I heard someone say, is this is a movement, not a moment, right? Because we've had, unfortunately, incidences like, the killing of George Floyd at the hands of police. We've seen that through our history. So, why is this one different? And it really does seem like there is energy and commitment and a renewed understanding. And I think for the allies, a renewed commitment to deepening and understanding about the issues around systemic racism, how we're going to need to address them. So I'm really inspired too. I mean, as tough as this is, and certainly like you said, with the backdrop of the pandemic, we feel like we're just fighting battles on all fronts, that the days are long, that the weeks are longer. But I do see in there a lot of hope, a lot of commitment to making things better, especially from the NIRSA community.
Very good.
Yeah. So, I just want to mention, hopefully folks know this, but there's a couple things we're trying to do in NIRSA to support our campus rec professionals, starting with the launch of the caucuses. We've had several caucuses so far, one for the Black community, one for the Latinx community, one for the BIPOC community. There's more being planned. The students have been hosting a couple roundtables and caucuses based on student perspectives. And really the goal here is we wanted to launch a few based on the communities we've been working with, but the door is wide open. If there's a group of people in campus recreation who wants to get together for, networking, mentorship, support, community building, we are absolutely available to be a little bit of the infrastructure and the help behind the scenes that makes that easy to make that come together. A couple other things the board has been working on. One, and David, maybe you can talk about this one, the History Task Force. NIRSA has made some efforts, through the years to track our history. And last year, the board took a hard look at what we've been doing and how we can do more and be better. NIRSA has this rich history that includes, I think, the diversity that's in the profession, certainly has the different perspectives on our history. And there's a goal now to tell the story of the seminal events in the association from multiple perspectives, right? It's more than just an event and a date and a timeline and an occurrence, but what was the context of what was going on when that occurred, right? How did that feel to the different groups in NIRSA? What was positive? What was negative? We have some really proud moments in our history to highlight. And, we also have some periods in our history where we didn't do well, and we need to be able to honestly and authentically talk about that and share that with the campus rec profession.
So yeah, so first of all, from a technology standpoint, I guess I hadn't figured this out because I got dark and I can't figure out how to light it up.
Just protection program there.
I'm hoping that people can still see, but from a history task force component, so my predecessor, Leah Hall Dorothy, she put together a task force that that wanted to speak about history and the relevance. But once we got into some of the common day society stuff that's going on right now with civil unrest, we saw a need to put a little bit more focus on the history of NIRSA and why we were here and how we were here. And to do that, we needed to make some adjustments to the committee, add some members who had some historical knowledge, add some members who had a little different lens. We're trying to capture everything and everybody, but we also want to share with, especially our newer members, our younger members, or those who are not in the know, is how NIRSA was founded, why it was founded, and some very significant impacts throughout our NIRSA history that are pretty critical and important for us. And it's a team effort. I mean, we have some of our veterans, seasoned veterans, I like to call them, have so much knowledge impacted that we got to get it out. And so our younger members and our membership as a whole can understand it and get it. I think that we have to do as much caption as possible, but at the same time too, we have to also show the relevance and significance of some of those movements that's happened throughout we are. And it amazes me sometimes when you have conversation with members and they didn't know why we were founded or how we were founded, or that women were not a part of NIRSA at one point or got removed from NIRSA and then added back in, and significant moves like that. Juliet Moore was our first Black female president. The significance items like that are very significant, and you are our first female executive director. So we have to be able to highlight those opportunities. So I think where we are in we took a little step back so we can take some big steps forward on our history task force. So I think we'll be able to see some big things here coming up in the future with that. We're going to put that task force in, and we're going to activate them probably late August, and get them moving. I took a little pause, but I think we're ready to go now.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I think that for a number of years, the board has really been pushing themselves and the groups they work with to make sure our various volunteer committees, program committees, faculty, the other two boards with the corporate board and the foundation board, all of these key leadership groups in NIRSA, are diverse. And that's not just an overnight thing that happens. You have to really look at your recruiting structures, the networks you're accessing, the appointment process. And I think we've made some progress through the last few years for sure. But I'm also watching, like David mentioned with the task force, a renewed commitment and even hitting pause when we need to and re-looking at who's appointed to certain groups. So for the example, the assembly last spring, and there's 2 or 3 groups involved in the appointments to the assembly, came forward with a good slate, but it wasn't as diverse racially as we had wanted it to be. So then we worked over the summer with the board liaison to the assembly, Andrea Sneed, to get some additional appointments to make sure we had a diversity of perspective in that important think tank for the profession. All right, well, let's move on a little bit. You mentioned it earlier, the other big thing going on right now is, of course, COVID and the global pandemic and the roller coaster I think we've all been on since March as we've watched the numbers go up and go down and go up again. And we've watched campuses, have to close and then reopen and maybe close again. So what are you hearing from members in that space?
So as far as COVID and how it's impacting our work, we have some stories that are kind of scary because some departments, my lights went off. We have some departments that are losing the budget funding and not being able to sustain itself, and we have some that are trying to figure out how to make it work. So it's a roller coaster ride for across the country with COVID. One of my colleagues he phrased it as COVID versus budget versus civil unrest versus personal life. And you put all that together, COVID is impacting all of it. And we got to work through it. And it's not just a one regional epidemic. This is worldwide, and it's not going away anytime soon. So, I'm watching, and in fact, in about an hour, I'm having all the Tennessee State schools. We're coming on a call together to figure out our opening strategies and how's everybody doing and where we're doing. I'm pretty sure that's going across the country. We've had some NIRSA Lives, Ideas in Motion opportunities, listening to those conversations as well. But COVID is impacting us left and right, and we got to be very creative. We got to rely on each other, and we, one of the biggest things I've noticed, not just from my own institution, but in our region, is a lot of folks are relying on rec folks to lead the way. I guess because our population and the fact that we're creative of what we get to deal with, but we're leading the way. And I just implore everybody to, and to test those best practices and what is the best practice, because what might work today may change tomorrow with COVID. So we have to be ready to make that pivot. One of the biggest things that we are be mindful of and take advantage of the fact that people have become sedentary and sitting in, and they want to do something now. And this opportunity for us to do something from a recreation and fitness and wellness standpoint. That mental well-being is important right now. I can't stress that enough, and we can talk about that. Can be a topic all by itself. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points. I do think this is that time, if you don't recognize it already, that there are some core competencies in this profession around innovation and creativity and risk management that your campuses are really relying on right now to get things figured out. And it's one day at a time, 1 week at a time, right? The scenario planning, the alternatives, the pivots, all of those things. The other thing I think I've been inspired by is, recreation for a long time has created that place for physical activity, but also that place for a sense of belonging and connectedness and social connectedness, which is such a huge part of well-being. And, we were so used to doing that within the four walls of the rec center and on the fields that we managed, and watching members pivot to not only deliver physical activity in some kind of virtual way, but also that sense of belonging and that sense of connection, back to a community, back to the campus community or the recreation community, whether that was for their students or their staff or both. There's been a lot of really positive things. And again, building on those creative skills to pivot and look at what that looks like. We're going to have a series through Ideas in Motion coming up in August on belonging and a sense of belonging. I think it's a 4 or 5 part series. So watch the Ideas in Motion page for that. Hopefully you've all found the NIRSA guidelines for reopening, and those have been helpful. The other thing I'm hearing from members is, we're always having to pitch our value and make sure our administrators and our students and our campus communities really understand the value of collegiate recreation. And, NIRSA puts out a number of resources to help campuses do that. And I think as we go forward in this new normal, we're going to be pitching our value in new ways, right? The core is still there, but maybe how you talk about it is different, right? So instead of, engagement inside your building, right, which was pretty easy to talk about 6 months ago, we're going to have to talk about engagement virtually, things like that. So I'm interested to hear from members in the coming weeks how they're doing that, what kind of resources would be helpful with that. We're digging back into our data, the great research and various journal articles that are already out there to really pull out some of those statistics that aren't specific to maybe team sports or club sports, because those may be compromised this fall. But the other ways we show our value that may be more relevant in this conversation right now. So be on the lookout for those. Well, let's see, David, other things going on in NIRSA. We kicked the board off virtually this year. You're having, I think, arguably the most bizarre presidency of any president in NIRSA. I mean, I think it got a little weird for Leah at the end, for sure. But now that we know we're in this unknown space for the foreseeable future, I think this is going to be an interesting year. So how have you kept your head around that and kind of going with the flow here?
So, part of me, the emotional side of me is kicking myself like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this part of it. Sign up for the mentoring and the seeing and the family reunion and to get to be around our members and see everybody. But the realistic side of me is, that I unknowingly prepared myself for this opportunity and taking the bootstraps, tying them up tight and moving forward, because this is where we are. And it's realistic for me. One of our colleagues, April Levitt at Florida State, she said something in an email she sent to me that made a lot of sense to me, that we're in the middle of 2 pandemics. It's easy to look at the COVID pandemic, but when you look at the social injustice pandemic as well, and so when I read that, it resonated with me tremendously. And April, if you're listening, thank you for saying that for me, because I needed it. But I'm in the middle of my presidential years is in the middle of 2 pandemics, and that's important. I'm sorry I'm moving around because I had to pick my phone up so I can listen, so I can see it. So, but it has put me in a place of, wow, I really have to do things different, don't I? I just can't be normal. I have to change it around. And here I am dealing with the situations we're in and adjusting and pivoting with the purpose, as Leah said, and also trying to show relevance. So it's only been 3 months. It feels like a lot longer than that, but got a couple more months to go, and I'm excited, apprehensive, nervous, and at the same time thrilled for the opportunity to make some differences and make some changes for our membership.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're president this year and you're by my side. I mean, a number of people have heard me say through the years, I seem to always get the president that I need and NIRSA needs in the moment that we need it. And, you know, maybe I should be thanking the wisdom of the NIRSA members who vote these presidents in, the nominations committee who puts these slates together. Or, frankly, if you believe in a higher power, I think a little thanks goes there too. But you know, we have a great team on the board, on the 3 boards and in the different volunteer groups that are really, I think, leaning in to, you know, not just meet the needs of members, but exceed the needs of members, and really pivot and try and stay one step ahead so that, you know, we can do well with this moment in time that really is meant to be a movement, right? And whether we're going to make significant progress on decreasing some of the health disparities that once again COVID has laid wide open in our communities, and make progress on dismantling issues of racism and systemic racism. You know, that the opportunities are huge. One of the things I'm excited about is the NIRSA board will be kicking off a strategic planning process next week. And I think somewhere around last April, you know, we briefly were like, strategic planning, how do you do that in the middle of this cray we're living in? You know, how are we possibly going to look out, you know, 3-4 years and figure out the right strategies for the organization? But I think through conversation, we quickly realized, no, we absolutely need to do strategic planning in this moment. We absolutely need to be in those kinds of conversations. And thanks to all the members who filled out the recent surveys, both the pulse surveys and then the longer all-member survey last January, February, we very much use all of those pieces of information to inform our work. There'll be more information coming out soon, but like the last strategic planning process, we will be involving a number of partner groups. Last time, I think we had about 8 or 9 different partner groups that represented probably 80 or 90 members. In the strategic planning process. We're going to do that again this year. I think our list includes maybe 13 partner groups this year. One of the things I'm most excited about is because we launched the caucuses in June, we plan to engage the caucuses in the strategic planning process. So we will be going to those various groups with scanning questions, with drafts for feedback, with, opportunities for, input and tell us what they'd like to see in this next NIRSA strategic plan. Well, let's see. It's been about 20 minutes. I think that's probably enough for today. But David, this has been really, really fun. I have to say. Thanks for doing our first Instagram Live with me.
Well, good. I've had a good time too, but I don't want to let it go too quickly because I want to ask how you're doing and how the headquarters staff is doing. I know we're looking at all of our members, but how's everybody in Corvallis and the Portland, not the Portland area, the Oregon area? How are your teams holding up?
Yeah, pretty good for the most part. I mean, they're a great group. They're resilient. I'm always really inspired in all the ways that they support one another, reaching out, checking in. We've been doing some of the fun Zoom things that everyone else have been doing, stretch breaks and coffee breaks and yoga at lunch, things like that. We had a fun trivia thing at the end of an all-team development day. But, some of the days are hard and there's just no getting around that. We had to lay off staff earlier in the spring, and that was tough. It was tough on those colleagues that we had to let go, and it was tough on those of us who stayed, absorbing new work and feeling the loss of those colleagues. And so I think, like everyone, we have our good days and our bad days, and we just dig deep and try and support one another. We get a lot of inspiration from the membership. Members have been so grateful and kind and forgiving, frankly, as we've launched all kinds of new products. I think one of the parts that, at least for me, and I think for many staff that make this time period a little bearable, is it is an opportunity to experiment, to take risks, to try new things. I think the whole world is a little more, everyone's pivoting, and there's just a lot of grace around that right now. And so where historically maybe associations or higher education aren't the biggest risk takers in the world. We tend to want to plan things out and do lots of surveys and talk to lots of leadership groups before we launch something. It has been fun to get to pivot and try things. And if they don't work, we'll stop and try the next thing. And if they do work, we'll keep doing that. Ideas in Motion is a great example of that. We've just loved the member response. So thank you for asking. I know staff always feels the love from you and from the board and our volunteer leaders.
This has been fun. I'm glad we're able to do it, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah. I think the plan is, this seemed to go okay. So I think the plan is maybe you and I do this about once a month. Maybe we'll do a little more advertising in case more people want to join live for future ones now that we've worked the bugs out. This will go up on Instagram TV if you want to tell any of your friends about it. And then we'll also load it up on the NIRSA YouTube channel. So you can watch the NIRSA social media channels. We'll highlight when this is available and share links, etc.
Good.
Well, thank you, David. Happy Friday.
Same to you. And if we're going to continue to do this, I will implore our members to throw some questions at us that we can ask on this group, on this platform, so we can respond to it. But it's been fun, and it's Friday. I'm looking forward to it. The sun is shining. It's probably 98 degrees with a heat index of 102 right now, but it is what it is over and beautiful to see. So, Pam, I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to doing more of these.
Great. Thanks, David.
Thanks everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Happy Friday.
Bye.